Gather round. It's time for your Real Estate Chalk Talk with the Hittner Group. Listen closely as your coaches discuss the culture, the economy, and the political scene, and how it affects your home and your real estate investments. Real Estate Chalk Talk is where you learn the science of buying and selling real estate and the art of living in your home. Your education begins in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Hey there, welcome to the program. This is your Real Estate Chalk Talk with the Hittner Group, hittnergroup.com, Hittner Group. That's all one word, hittnergroup.com, 612-627-8000. That's 612-627-8000. Give us a ring-a-ling-a-ling. Be happy to have a chat with you about your real estate needs. Of course, that first call is all with no cost and absolutely no obligation. 612-627-8000. Well, we got a busy week this week. This weekend, we tipped over about 8,000 homes on the market. First time in
really
heck of a long time, 8,000. Now we're kind of settled back down to 7,700, 7,800 homes on the market, so we sold some off during the week. New pendings this week, 781. It's actually down from last week. Last week we had 844 that moved through during the week.
Of the 781, how many were yours, Senior?
Of the 781, 2 of them were mine.
All right, there you
go. A couple in there.
I know.
Yeah.
You've been busy.
We've been really busy.
I'm anxious to hear about that.
We've been busy, and stuff coming on the market, stuff going off the market. We're going to have a strong fall. A few more in the pipeline, so we're going to wrap up the year in pretty good shape. 34 days on the market is the average days on market for the pending ones, for the ones that went pending. 34 days on the market for the stuff that's sitting out there now. We're about 45 days on the market.
So what's that telling you? What's the data telling you?
There's a couple.
Obviously not a buyer's market yet. But
no, let me just look at something here, though. This is kind of, now that you mention it.
Oh, man.
Statewide. So statewide, the median sales price is $352,000 statewide. So then I look at the average sale price. The average sale price, Kelvin, is $422,000. So median, remember, is
the middle.
The middle.
Yep.
So half the property sold for more money and half for less money, no matter how much it was. It's just more or less. Now you take the average, that is so much higher. I mean, that's quite a bit higher for the average.
So that means you got some big properties taking that number up. Am I thinking right?
Yeah, bringing that number up. So that would indicate to me that we've got the upper bracket stuff is maybe starting to move again. Where it was kind of stuck before, because all year long the median and the average have been, pretty much like within a few bucks of one another. So to have that big of a difference now is would indicate to me that maybe some of these higher end homes are moving. It could be that just we're getting the closings now on some of the new construction.
That's what I was wondering, because new construction is going to run that 422 or higher, right?
Or
so that's
going
to. Are builders starting to do anything to try to just move inventory since we're coming into kind of the third trimester of the year, or not yet?
They've always got some kind of incentive going on. It seems like no matter what the market is like, you're either going to do some incentive on basement finishes or upgrading appliances or countertops or cabinet upgrades or some. It seems like there's always something.
Yep.
When interest rates were at 7.5%, they had. They were buying money ahead, and so that they could offer lower interest rates. That kind of has disappeared now. You don't see that anymore. But they're busy. I mean, they're busy. It's taken a long time. The supply lines situation seems to have gone away. There seems to be no problem getting materials anymore and whatnot. So, but that's a pretty big deal. With active listings right now, again, 7,750. And last year at this time was 6,500, so we're about 1,200 more than we were a year ago. That's pretty good. Still 1,700 down than pre-COVID.
Yep.
So, but getting close. Getting close.
Are you finding, Keith, when you're talking to people, there's homes to see? Because for a while you were saying, gosh, it's really tough to find something.
Yeah.
You'd say, hey, they want to be in this area, and there's literally 4 homes on the market in that area. And are you finding you have more variety now or not?
It just depends on. I was on the phone with some people this week, and they're looking for they want some acreage.
Okay.
So we were talking to one of the builders that we like, and so their landed price for everything is going to be about $1 million.
Okay.
Okay, so now let's find a piece of land. Can't find a piece of land.
Really?
Anything that you find that's decent,
Mm-hmm.
is by the time you get your well and septic in, and you get your road in, and you get your all that stuff done, utilities run in there, you're looking at $300,000 just for an acre and a half, 2 acres. Then you get a $600,000-$700,000 build on top of it, and it just puts you over. So I said, well, really, then you're better off, because I was working with some clients earlier in the year, and we were all over the west side. There were a lot of homes for sale in that price tier,
Right.
with beautiful homes with nice acreage and so forth. But then when you get dialed into, no, we want to be in this area because I want to be so far from family here and I want to be so far from school there, it's like, okay, there's one house. There was literally one house for sale that fit that criteria, because you do get so much new construction is about 30% more. So you do get much more for your money if you're buying existing, but there wasn't any. So that's kind of the way it is with anything. We had a home that we sold this week, and we had 8 offers on it. And this was
Really?
8 offers on a house that is $650,000 price point. So we have another house out in Bloomington that was on the market for $700,000. And so I thought, hey, if you like this house, maybe you'd like that one out there. It's similar house, same price point. And there's like, nope, they've got it dialed into this small little area of the metro that they want to live in, and that was just not where they wanted to be. And it had no kids in school, so it wasn't a school thing. It was just like from work or from family or whatever it is.
Yep.
This is where they wanted to be. So it seems like there's plenty of properties, to answer your question, making a long story out of a short one.
Mm-hmm.
There's plenty of inventory out there if you're not fussy about where it is.
Okay.
And if once you start dialing down into school districts and streets, we have people that want to live on this street.
Seriously.
I want to live on that street. I want this neighborhood. Okay, now you're basically waiting for, or we'll mail everybody in the neighborhood and say, hey, you're thinking of making a move? We got somebody
interested
in, maybe taking.
Anybody ever reply to that kind of stuff, Keith?
Sometimes.
Really?
Yeah, it just, you catch people in the right spot. If they're not interested, they just throw it away.
Mm-hmm.
But if they're interested, they're like, holy cow, this is a God thing.
Mm-hmm.
And, then they'll call back, and maybe you can make it work and maybe you can't. Sometimes when people are funny, then they think, oh, I got this guy, he really wants it bad, so they can, charge a premium on it. And
yeah.
Doesn't work.
Yeah. Everybody's got their motivations, right?
Right. Doesn't work like that.
Nope.
Pretty interesting, though. Homes for sale in the state, 16,165 homes on the market. Not bad. Up about 11% from last year. That's statewide. And even that median sale price is up 1.7%. If you remember, Kelvin, a couple weeks ago we did the Federal Reserve. I had their numbers out.
Right. Yep.
And we were actually off in the metro, like 0.5%.
Right.
On sale price, but statewide, looking pretty
You're right
good.
on. Yep.
Closed sales are down. This is August numbers, down 9%. So the volume is off a little bit from the year. We'll see. Fed rates. We'll talk about that in your segment there about the interest rates and if that's going to have any impact or not.
How many listings? You still got quite a few listings floating out there, or have you sold off a lot of what you had?
We've sold off a lot now.
A couple weeks ago, you're like, boom,
but we got rid of most of them. We got one that's coming on the market, really nice one out in, it comes on this weekend, out in Woodbury, $400,000, 4-car garage and it's actually 2 garages, the one 2-car garage, and there's another 2-car garage separate that is, tall ceilings with a lift. Which is
wow.
super duper for somebody. It's a Wrangler, great house. So if you're a car guy,
perfect.
It's perfect. And then there's an entrance off the back too. So it isn't like you have to drive through a garage to get to the garage. It has its own driveway coming off the back of the lot.
Really? Where's this home?
Woodbury. Yeah.
Okay.
Maybe I'll think about that, Calvin.
Well, I'm thinking for my daughter and her husband in there.
No, but that house did have a price reduction, the one that they're looking at.
Did it?
Yes, it did.
To what?
It's down to what is it now? 800,000. So it came from from the house that where Calvin and I were trying to get his daughter into a house, and it was started at 885. Now it's down to 800. So they dropped it to 885.
And you think it's worth 7? So
yeah, well, it's probably 750.
yeah.
Anyhow, we got to head out to break, pay some bills. This is your Real Estate Chalk Talk with the Hittner Group, HittnerGroup.com. When we come back, we're going to talk to Dave Rogers. I got questions about. I had a conversation with someone this week about insurance things. I just want to ask you some questions so that you can respond to them. Auto insurance in particular. We'll see you right after these messages. Thanks for sticking around. This is your Real Estate Chalk Talk with the Hittner Group. 612-627-8000. 612-627-8000. HittnerGroup.com. Keith Hittner is not in the studio. He's taking my grandson in to get a MRI on his knee. Had a little hockey injury that kind of working through. He's about 90%, I guess, so we'll see. Trying to get him back on the ice so he can start working that knee out because the season's coming.
Yes, it is. It's right around the corner.
Okay, we got Dave Rogers here in the studio. Why don't you give your contact information before I forget about it?
No, not a problem. My name is Dave Rogers. My phone number is 952-484-7615. And you can reach me at my website at rogersagencyinc.com, and that's RODGERS, agencyinc.com. Right now it's pointing to my IPN site, but new website is up and coming here hopefully in the next month or two.
Nice.
All right, so insurance seems to be like a center point of conversation now.
We get beat up on Dave here.
Yeah, and so, I mean, you're even hearing about, the presidential campaigns. They're talking about the insurance costs and stuff like that. And we've had, Kelvin's reported on situations where they've had people who are become disqualified from buying a home because the insurance was too expensive. They didn't qualify anymore. And so all that stuff is going on. What I had a question this week was someone asked me is what is the liability of, he had his car stolen, all right, because we live in Minneapolis, and so cars get stolen all the time. So he had the car stolen. He said, what happens if they take that car now and run into somebody and kill them? He said, what is the liability on me because it's my car and my insurance? How does that work?
That's a great question to which I'm going to tell you I don't have a great answer to. It's going to vary from carrier to carrier whether they're going to cover that. But also you've got a clause in there where it's illegal activity.
Okay.
So 99% of the time I'm going to say you're off the hook.
Okay.
There is that 1% chance, though, that you could be on the hook. But more than likely you're going to be off the hook. But that's going to come down to a claims discussion with the claims adjuster and how the policy language reads.
Does it matter if like many years ago, it was like, oh, you left your car unlocked, so it's your fault, so now we're not going to cover you.
Right. The laptop was laying on the seat along with you.
Yep.
Yeah. Does that matter?
Not necessarily.
They're just going to break the window.
Yeah, they're still going to break the window. I mean, you still have the issues like before with the Kias and the Hyundais, right? There's a lot of carriers right now that don't even want to talk about those if you are buying that. What was it? That the 13s to 18s, I believe.
It was a Kia.
Yeah, it was a Kia.
Why is that?
Didn't have the
Why is that?
lockout.
Because they don't have the lockout. I mean, they were so easy to hot wire and steal.
Yeah.
Really?
There are insurance companies right now that will not take Kias in that
Price
frame.
point, or that time frame.
Really?
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Because it was so easy to hotwire them?
Yeah.
Yep. Oh yeah, it was very easy. So there's a lot of just trying to look here. See, I don't have the exact years here right now, but yeah, there are Kias and Hyundais that are not
Jam a
insurable.
screwdriver in there and start right up.
That's all it would take to start it.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
It's kind of like a tractor.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's great.
Farm tractor. Just stick a screwdriver in
Yep,
there.
just turn her.
Just turn her and go.
The other question that came up was, and this is regarding homeowners insurance.
Mhm.
The Airbnbs and all these property rentals and all that stuff is around. So I rent my property out to a couple that's coming in from out of town, going to have their anniversary and or wedding, And so they have a wedding party that's coming to the house, and they're having a party. They're serving alcohol, and again, somebody gets has a couple of drinks too many.
Yep.
And they go out and get in an accident on the road. So what is the liability of me as the homeowner in that situation?
So in that situation,
because they drank at your home, right?
Because they drank at my home.
But under a VRBO setting, or just in
like
general?
That,
Okay.
something like that.
Okay, so in that instance, you're not liable because they're the renter. They're quote unquote the owner or occupant of the space at that time, not you.
All right.
You should have the proper liability coverage. Obviously, you want to make sure that you have at least $500,000 on your homeowner's liability policy, if not $1 million now, and have at least $1 million to $2 million on your umbrella liability as well. Especially if you're doing an Airbnb, that way you're covering your liability should something like that happen. But again, where it's Dram Shop here, right in Minnesota. I only know this because I work at the Vikings. I'm a beer vendor there. Dram Shop, it's the one that serves that beer or provides that alcohol that is going to be caught as legally liable on that.
All right, so that's exactly what I was curious about, because I worry that the insurance company would say, well, you charged for that space, so now you become a commercial space and blah blah blah. But when we have people come in, because we have people come into the mansion all the time, and we rent the space out. And if they're serving alcohol, we require a professional bartender with Dram insurance to be serving.
Because and they have to have their liquor liability on that.
Yeah, because I want to push that liability off of them.
Wow.
Yeah,
good job.
And people ask you, well, my daughter's a bartender, and they have a certificate that they're a real bartender. It's like, well, that's great. They know how to pour drinks. But
they don't know how to stop.
But do you have Dram insurance? And then they're like,
what is Dram?
So Dram is basically just the legal liability. Who's legally liable? So, and I'll go back to the Vikings or the U.S. Bank Stadium, because I worked there walking up and down the stairs. You'll see me there if you want to. Whoever serves that alcohol can be considered legally liable. So you've got U.S. Bank Stadium, and the Vikings are on the hook for that. Plus me for if I'm the one serving. So they can go after all those parties in that instance. So
you have to identify if somebody's
right. So
obviously,
if you come up to me and you're stumbling all over the place, I've got to take responsibility and say, you know what, how about you go get yourself a hot dog or a hamburger?
Right.
Get some food, come back to me in a bit, we'll talk then. So there's a lot of things you've got to look for and watch for. So having that certificate actually means they've gone through some training, and that has to be updated every 2 to 3 years. So not to go off on the tangent, but what I wanted to come back to is that Airbnb scenario you're talking about. Make sure your homeowner's insurance knows that you're doing this, that you're going to be an Airbnb shop, because you have to have the right coverage on your homeowner's policy. Otherwise, if you had a claim there, if the house did burn down or some other incident happened while their home is being rented, they could deny coverage because it was not a covered activity. So make sure your homeowner's policy knows that you're doing Airbnb or you're doing VRBO, because there are different coverages that you need for that as well.
Did you have to do that, Keith? Because you use your home as kind of a rental
all the time, but we're always there. We never leave, so we're always occupying the house when someone's there. So we're there.
Yours is a different scenario.
Okay.
Yes.
So we're there. So it's like, this room, we let them use this room.
Yeah.
Okay.
But we're in the house.
Interesting.
Yeah. So his is separate from an Airbnb where you vacate the home and someone comes in and stays there for the week or the weekend or whatever.
Interesting.
Okay. So then the other thing is, and we were just kind of having this conversation before we came on air, is about multiple residents in a property. Everybody's got their vehicle, and their vehicles are in their own names. I had this conversation with my daughter earlier this week because she's got teenage kids at home, and the cars are they got a pickup truck, they got a couple cars. She's got a car. Everything's in her name.
Yep.
But the kids are driving them. How does that work, and what is the proper way to structure that?
Sure.
Well, it has to be in the parents' name, doesn't it? Until they're 18 or older.
Not necessarily. I think you can own a car now at 16.
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
And that's been that way. I mean, I own cars. My cars that I had when I was a kid, I always had them in my name.
So my oldest son, his vehicle is in his name, and it has been since he was 16 as well.
Yeah.
So because he actually purchased it.
Yeah.
Okay.
But he lives under my roof, so he has to be on my insurance. So every carrier that I deal with and I work with requires all drivers in the household be listed on the policy and be covered on that policy. So they can't necessarily go out and get their own policy. We still have to bring them back in and cover them under your policy, the master policy, because there's too many different legal liabilities should they go off and drive your vehicle. You know, which policy's covering them? There's just too many questions in the air on that from a cover standpoint. So all my carriers require that, you know, your kids, if they live at home, they have be under your policy. Now, if you have multiple residents, if you have like a triplex or a duplex, that's a different scenario.
A different deal.
That's a totally different scenario. That's a renting situation or something like that. They get their own policy, cover themselves. So,
question for you.
Absolutely.
How much time do we have?
We've got a minute
left. What about if they're in college? So they're residents. They rent an apartment on East Street, like in Roseville, where my youngest son lives. And then when he's not there, he's either at my home or my wife's home.
So how I answer that question is
ex-wife.
Where does his driver's license show that his residence is?
Permanent residence.
Yours. So he still has to be on your policy.
Got
so
it.
Unless he changes his residence to that other address, then he can get his own policy. But as long as it shows your address, he has to be under your policy.
Makes sense.
Do you have to list and we'll answer this when we come back from break, but do you have to list the primary drivers on specific vehicles? I mean, is there an advantage or disadvantage? Like if this pickup truck is the one that he drives all the time, do they have to be listed on that? And does it matter who it is? Hey, welcome back. Thanks for sticking around. This is your Real Estate Chalk Talk with the Hittner Group, hittnergroup.com, HITTNER Group.com, 612-627-8000. We're here with Dave Rogers, and we're talking insurance. Thrilling topics, but important, because if you don't have it, you're going to get in trouble. Simple as ABC. And there's a lot of people driving around out there with no insurance on their car. I can't believe it, the risk that's taken. What happens if we get crashed with somebody that has no insurance?
That's a great question, and unfortunately I have real-life experience with that.
Okay.
My son, again, I'll go back to my son. He purchased a vehicle a little over a year ago, and 3 months after owning it, he was hit coming on 35W going south by a gentleman that didn't have insurance and had no driver's license.
Oh, perfect.
Yeah, it was a great thing. So ended up totaling out the vehicle. Unfortunately, through that scenario there, we had to go through our own insurance company because there was no insurance, obviously. So luckily, we had collision coverage on his vehicle, so we had to pay our deductible.
Right.
And get our vehicle, well, it was totaled in this instance, so they cut us a check for the vehicle after some negotiating.
Which is not enough to replace it in most cases.
It actually can be if you know how to negotiate properly.
Okay.
And that's the other thing, too, is, you know, if you have a personal agent that you can call and talk to that can be on your side and help you navigate that, that's what I do. I help my insureds navigate that. How do we properly get the correct value for your vehicle? And there's a lot of different ways we can do that, and you know, I help my insureds with that, and I help my son with this as well. So
how do you do it? Isn't it just Blue Book value, and that's kind of what it is?
My biggest thing that I go back to an adjuster, and I say, not a problem. You want to give me X for this vehicle? Okay, show me where I can go buy that vehicle locally here for X. You know, and that really kind of turns the conversation. I don't do it in a confrontational manner. I just say, not a problem. I'm okay with that amount of money if I can go buy this vehicle for that money.
Yeah.
Okay.
You know, if I can replace it, because that's what we should be doing, is replacing the vehicle like, kind, and quality. So in the most recent instance, my poor son, he's actually totaled this vehicle twice now. He was hit from behind, which totaled the vehicle again. And in this last instance, again, we went and said, hey, show me where I can buy this vehicle for X. And they said, okay, give us some examples of what it would be, and we were able to do that, and they came up quite a bit to meet what we actually paid to replace the vehicle with a like vehicle.
Oh, wow.
So
I didn't know that, did you?
Yeah.
No, I didn't know that.
There's a lot of things you can do to actually, in a correct manner, right? Insurance companies, yes. Do they want to pay as little as possible? Yes.
Yep.
They're a for-profit company.
Right.
You know, just like you and I are, we're all for profit. Well, but they also want to pay what they owe, and the company you work with really will determine that. Are they going to pay what they actually owe?
Do you find that some are better than others?
Oh, definitely, yeah. There are some that will say, yep, you know, will help you with this. There's one carrier, and again, I'm not going to name any carrier names here, but there's one carrier that I've dealt with in the past where it says just you being there, Keith, in that instance, you're 10% at fault, so we're reducing it 10% no matter what.
Okay.
Just because you were there. So, which is
that's unbelievable.
That is unbelievable.
Yeah. Again, my son was at a dead stop when he was hit from behind. And if this company had been part of it, they would have said, you're 10% at fault just for being there.
Mm-hmm. And not being aware that this guy was going to hit you.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, my son stopped for someone trying to make a left-hand turn where no left-hand turn could be made into a softball field.
Okay.
So it's like, it's ridiculous. So.
All right. So then get back to the question we had before we went out to break. Having a designated driver. So if I have, let's just say, for example, that his son has got his name, the car is titled in his name.
Yep.
Or the car is titled in Kelvin's name. Better.
Either way. Yep.
Better scenario.
Mm-hmm.
But his son always drives that car.
Right.
So should you name a designated driver for a car, or doesn't it matter?
Does it help on rates? Like if I have bad driving history and they have a good driving history?
So again, I'll answer that question. It's going to vary from carrier to carrier. Mm-hmm. I've got some carriers that basically we just list the drivers, list the cars, and they do what's called composition household rating. So they basically take a picture of the entire household and say, these are the rates we're going to charge for these vehicles. It doesn't matter if we have 4 drivers and 6 vehicles or we have 3 drivers and 2 vehicles. That's a composition household rating. So they take an overall picture to come up with that rate. A lot of carriers, though, still do that where they say, Keith, you're driving this car, Kelvin, you're driving this car, and I'm driving this car, and we rate them that way. So
what's better? What have you found?
They're both about equal. You know, so, and that's the great thing about being an independent broker is I can take each scenario and find what's going to be best for your household. Is it going with the carrier that does the composition household rating, or is it the one that actually takes and says, yep, you're driving this vehicle, you're going to school this far, or you're going to work this far, or whatever. So it really is going to vary by carrier to carrier.
I noticed on someone when I've shopped ours that they'll say, hey, plug this thing into your car and you get a reduced rate.
Yep.
Because they want to see how you're driving, and then they said it will beep at you if you're doing things that they don't like. And
sure,
you know, number one, where do you plug it in? Number two, what is that whole thing?
So it's basically plugs into the OSB port underneath the steering column. There's a little plug-in port down there where everyone does all their diagnostic work or whatever. Or if you want to tune your vehicle, that's where you plug in the tune, the chip, or whatever. So it plugs in there and it stays there. And it's basically GPS cellular chipped, so it will report back to the insurance company how fast are you accelerating, how hard are you braking, what time of day are you driving, because they find that obviously if you drive between, let's say, 1 a.m. and 5 a.m., nothing good ever happens there, right? That's when a lot of bad things happen. So if you're not driving during those hours, all those things will help your rate. How far are you driving? You know, and again, the fast, the speed, how, you know, so it tracks all these different things. Some will, yes, beep at you, some won't. Some carriers now are just going with the straight app on your phone, and you say yes or no if you're driving. You know, so you can track it that way now. So instead of having to plug something in, you can just put an app on your phone and it'll track you.
So if you're a passenger in there, you would just say, no, I'm not driving.
Correct. Yep, I'm the passenger, or yes, and if you don't say, I'm not with the carrier right now that does it that way on the app, so I don't know if it's one where...
Is that a good deal? Because they say it reduces it 15% off, or do they just mark things up 15% and give you the real rate anyway?
Yeah, so yes, they do rate you differently. If you say, yes, I'm willing to do this, they will give you an upfront discount. Now, there are some carriers, depending on your habits and your characteristics of your driving, you might actually see your rate go up.
Or get canceled.
I don't know about canceled, but you'll definitely see a rate increase. You know, so they will definitely take a look at that and say, you know what, we are going to charge you more because you always accelerate hard, you always brake fast, which means you may not be paying attention or you've got risky tendencies.
Okay, so now get back to housing.
Yep.
So we had, as we mentioned last segment, that there's people who have not qualified because of insurance costs. Do you find that the pool of insurance companies that you have available is shrinking?
Yes.
And then what happens to those people who are who are insured by that company that has chosen to no longer write insurance in Minnesota?
Yep.
What happens to their insurance policy?
So a couple of different things. It depends on how the carrier is choosing stop writing business in the state. Some are just pausing all new business.
Okay.
They're going to continue their book and continue that. Well, you then get to what's called adverse selection at some point, where they have to absolutely either shut down that particular book of business or change something drastically. So by adverse selection, I mean that pool is shrinking, and now you've got all the people that have had all the claims and all the other issues that have happened where rates are just going up through the roof. That's a bad thing. We don't want to get to where we're at that point. Typically, if a carrier is, quote unquote, totally leaving the state or leaving personal lines business, we then have to shop that business, try to find another carrier.
So they'll get a notice from the insurance company saying that we're not a non-renewal.
We're non-renewing.
Essentially.
Yep.
Do they ever just we'll just raise the rates so that they don't want to renew?
We have carriers that are doing that as well. Okay. So we have a carrier that is getting out of the toys, right? So the motorcycles, the boats, the RVs and stuff. And they basically said, we're going to do a significant rate increase to encourage you to leave.
Is that a high claim area?
It can be, yeah.
Really?
It can be. You've got carriers that write those stuff really well, and you've got others that just haven't figured out that piece yet.
Okay.
So
you wouldn't think that, if you got a boat, how many times do you have a claim on a boat in Minnesota?
Yeah, but when you do, it's a big one.
Is that?
Yeah, I mean, because usually it involves the evening or overnight, and other substances are involved. We get back to dram shop.
Okay.
So.
All right, final question then. What about, we go into a house, we look at a property, and the insurance carrier comes back and says, oh, there's been a claim on that roof, but obviously there's no new roof on it. What is the database that they're looking at? How do they know that?
So much like you have a database for medical information history, there's a database on insurance information history now.
And does everyone participate in that?
Not everyone. Okay. Most carriers do, but not all do. Now, we only have one or two that don't participate in that, but they require that information. It's kind of goofy. But yeah, most carriers do participate in that database.
Do you have, when you have someone exiting a market, do you have new people coming into the market?
Not right now. Okay. No, Minnesota's a tough market right now, and nobody's new entering it for us right now.
Wow, we got to head out again to break. When we come back, we'll have Calvin Kamick, ladies and gentlemen, with the mortgage update. Boy, huge interest rate reduction. We'll hear about that when we come back. Hey there, welcome back to the program. This is your Real Estate Chalk Talk. Calvin Kamick, ladies and gentlemen, 651-231-2500. 651-231-2500. The great rates, the low cost of acquisition. Calvin Kamick.
How are you?
Super duper.
Give us a quick real estate update.
Quick update, just fast and dirty. Listen to this. 38,567 new listings came on the market so far this year. Last year's number was 35,186, so about 3,000 less homes that came on the market this year. We're at about 7,700, 7,800 listings on the market. That's up about 1,200 from a year ago, down from pre-COVID numbers. Property flow through is running around, actually it was down a little bit this week, 781 new pendings this week versus 844 last week, coming off the Labor Day weekend. Had a little bump there. I think we're going to look at that. I think by the end of the year we're going to be over $8,000 properties on the market. And that'll put us pretty darn close to where we were pre-COVID, certainly more than in 2020. But in 2019 we had 9,500, probably 10,000 at the end of the year. So it's the inventory's getting there. It's kind of normalizing.
Normalized market.
Pretty much normalizing the market.
Neither side can blame the other side right now.
Neither side can blame the other side right now, right? So, everybody's pointing their finger at each other.
Well, let's talk real quick so thank you for that. Let's talk real quick about mortgage rates, and we will look at what happened yesterday. The Fed announced a not 25 basis point, but a 50 basis point cut. Mm-hmm. And, the lights, the phones light up. Everybody's going. And seasoned real estate professionals even sending me articles saying rates are now in the high fours, not understanding there's a difference between Fed funds rate, the money at which banks borrow money from the federal government, which is what they reduced.
Right. Then they mark it up and sell it to.
And then mortgage interest rates. So I'm like, man. And I'm like, I kind of gave them a bad time because, just been around way too long now.
Right.
They just go, better.
Yeah. Right.
So here's a couple headlines. Bonds lose ground despite larger Fed rate cut. Next headline, yes, mortgage rates really did move higher after Fed rate cut.
Mm-hmm.
So what happens is we price, so the Fed funds rate, it's great. I'm super happy they did a half, right? So it's helping on credit cards. It helps on automobiles. It helps on short-term
consumer debt.
Yep, consumer debt helps a ton. Mm-hmm. It will trickle into our market, but in our world, everybody anticipates everything. So everybody anticipated a quarter. The last 2 days, people anticipated there's a 63% chance, it's stupid numbers, but 63% chance that they're going to do a half versus a quarter, and therefore, we saw rates dip a little bit. Mm-hmm. So we took we already had the lowering of the mortgage rates, and now when they actually knew what it was, it bumped actually up a little bit. And I keep refreshing my phone just to kind of see where are we at, right now, and it looks like we're even on the day. So we didn't pick up the big bump on the mortgage side. However, every mortgage lender out there is advertising lower rates because they're trying to get the phone to ring, folks. So you got to understand, it's called marketing, right? So they see the Fed funds rates go down. Which
doesn't really affect mortgage rates.
It really doesn't, but everybody believes it does, and it has helped a little bit
indirectly.
Right? Yep, indirectly. So we anticipated that, and we have to just understand marketing's marketing, and we're doing the same thing. Just I'm sending the thing out to my entire database. Hey, rates are dropping, because rates did drop, but they didn't drop just because of yesterday. That was already priced in. And then we just had what the resulting, decision was from the Fed yesterday. So, but hey, rates are, 30-year fixed money, high fives, low sixes, so but it depends on credit, depends on what type of loan.
But high fives, you're paying it down.
You're paying a point. Yeah, you're going to pay a half discount point or a full discount point depending on your credit, type of property, type of loan program. I had one yesterday, and a really nice gentleman called in to the show last week, so I'm sure he's listening right now. But we're doing a bank statement program there where it's a business owner, very successful business owner, but as many successful business owners do, they write off the majority of their income.
Absolutely.
So we have a 12-month in-house bank statement program where we just take your bank statements and derive your income based on that. Mm-hmm. And he's got a number of properties. There's just a lot of moving parts, and it's been super fun working with him. But the rates are higher on those, right? And him and I were talking about yesterday. He goes, I thought rates were coming down. I'm like, yeah, but it's bank statement program, and it's not your traditional Freddie, Fannie.
Well, you and I did that when you refinanced my house. Mm-hmm. So we had to, because I do the same thing. We had a number of businesses, and we're writing everything off because you save what you can save. Yep. And I couldn't qualify to buy the house I was living in.
That was a very fun conversation with my underwriter. I've been in his house. I promise he lives there.
Yeah.
He can't afford it.
Yeah. Right? But we had to plan a year in advance almost. Next year, you got to do this, and to show some income. Yep. So that we can do the refi, and it all worked out great.
Yep. So anyway, rates are good, but conventional Freddie Fannie products, high fives, low sixes. You can do low sixes. I'm encouraging people not to pay a discount, because the difference in your payment between $5.99 and $6 1/4 or 6 3/8, that's an emotional decision you're making, not a financial one.
Can you? We had a number of offers on a property this weekend, and the financing. We always look at the financing. It went from 20% to. Actually had an offer at 3% conventional, all conventional, 5% to 3%. Explain the advantages or disadvantages, because these are people who they have big down payment money, obviously well qualified. Mm-hmm. What's the difference in the percent down? Between 5%?
Like down, why they do that?
Why would they do that? Assuming they have the research, is there an advantage of 20%, 15%, 10%? Why?
Well, the more you put down, the lower the mortgage insurance is going to be. But a lot of people are just putting 5% down. Like, for example, for Loan Depot, we have a $4,000 grant we give you if you just put 5% down.
Oh.
Free money. But if you put 6% down or 10% down, that
you
goes
don't
away.
Get it. Okay.
So just interesting little nuances
and why is that? Why did they choose to do that? Is there?
There's loan level price adjustments that don't apply to a certain amount. Okay. Blah blah blah, and we're giving it back to the consumer because we're good people.
Okay.
I think.
Okay.
Does that sound close?
Sure. It's super.
It's super. So, and And the 3% down is probably a home ready or a home possible where they qualify under the income qualifications there. Were any of those using like bond programs?
No, these are all. This is $600,000 homes.
Oh wow. Okay, so these people are just wanting to hold on to their cash.
They're just wanting to hold on to the cash.
Maybe they see some renovations. Even in a $600,000 home, you might see something that you might want to do, and you want to hold on to some cash.
I just wonder if there's any difference in the interest rate if it's a 10% down versus a 20% down.
Well, if we've talked numerous times, the best loan program I think is 15% down because you have a little bit of mortgage insurance on there, which means there's another responsible party if I default. So my rate is lower at 15% down than it is at 20%.
So the risk assessment to the investor is less.
Yep, because I've got a mortgage insurance company there insuring some of my risk.
Mm-hmm.
Now, because of everything we did recently or the industry did recently, lower credit score folks actually have a little bit better rate than good credit folks. Remember that a while back we talked about that, how they just shifted that to try to open up opportunities for people that have not as strong of credit, which is kind of not a great thing in my opinion.
No.
You should be rewarded for good credit, not like, well, we're going to use your good credit to offset the risk here on people that have poorer credit. But
what do you hear from the Mortgage Bankers Association or from your industry or from your company? Because nationally, we're starting to see default rates kind of creep.
Mm-hmm.
They're creeping up a little bit. Here locally, here still about 1.5%, 1.2%. But nationally, they're starting to creep up.
Mm-hmm.
Any concern there?
I don't think so because a lot of people are still sitting on a 3 or 4% rate. So I don't think we're going to see a big shift there. I think a lot of people that are in that 7 or 8% rate right now are looking to refinance and looking to get out, and some of them can, some of them cannot.
Mm-hmm.
And I get concerned about that block of business. As we've talked in the past, I get concerned about all the bonds and the free money we're giving out, which people consider free money, but it's really tied to the back of that loan.
Mm-hmm.
And when you go to refinance or pay that thing off, instead of let's say,
the chicken's going to come home to roost.
Yeah, so you're going to pay off that. It's a kind of a silent second back in the day. So we can give you $18,000 through Minnesota Housing, right? Well, when you sell the property, there's another 18 that's due, and we've had people looking to sell, and then like, what? My payoff? What do you mean?
Yeah.
Or they did a modification. They didn't realize they modified $100,000. I mean, just baffling to me a little bit. But I think some of those types of things are going to come back to roost a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
But there's a ton of programs. I mean, we were counting the other day. There's like 54 down payment assistance programs in Minnesota alone. It's ridiculous.
I saw a house advertised this week. It was like $300,000 and some odd $1,000 house, and they were advertising $115,000 of grant and program money available for that house.
If you fit in this box,
yeah,
right? Because you can't make more than $12 an hour. You have to have been born on a Thursday, but if all things align.
Yeah.
So anyway, love to have the conversation. Love the conversation we had after last week's show. So give me a call, 651-231-2500. I'll answer the phone. We'll have a conversation.
That's it for this week on your Real Estate Chalk Talk with the Hittner Group. 612-627-8000. Give us a ring-a-ling-a-ling. We'd be happy to have a chat with you, and we'll see you next week.